back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with me, Nana Aquia and Martin Daubney.
OK, let's take a look at today's front pages now.
Right, the Mirror leads dedicates its front page to Brazilian footballer icon Pelé, who's died aged 82 following a battle with cancer.
And my favourite picture of the day there, and probably of all time, the star calls Pelé the real greatest of all time, the real GOAT, the greatest of all time, with his iconic image of the Brazilian legend and England captain in 1970, Bobby Moore.
Now, the Times leads on claims by ministers that the cost of strike action will force unions into climb downs as soon as spring. And the
Telegraph reports Rishi Sunak is considering the return of restrictions for arrivals from COVID-hit China, with the Health Secretary meeting Sir Chris Whitty and Jenny Harris.
And the Daily Mail reports that millions of families are struggling with an average of over £16,000 in personal debts as unsecured borrowing hits record levels.
On to the Independent. NHS leaders have warned the health service is not equipped to tackle the so-called parallel pandemic of mental health exacerbated by lockdown and the cost of living.
Right, so time to go to the papers now. Joining us this morning is political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, also broadcaster Liz Kershaw.
OK, Liz, let's start with the sad news of the passing of Vivienne Westwood. Now, somebody who's moved in music circles for many years, you must have crossed circles with, if not Vivienne, then at least the punk on top.
Well, a clientele.
Yeah.
Right, no, I was just too young to be in that scene at the time. I was a student at Leeds University, and we did have her iconic image on the wall of the Queen, you know, with the
God Save the Queen, that one.
Yeah, and a pin through her nose or whatever it was. And, but I've met, you know, all the bands that she dressed or inspired, I've met since. And the other thing I wanted to link this to today, oh, by the way, if I'd known, I'd missed that Vivienne Westwood had died overnight, I would have come today dressed entirely differently. But I've got my respectable clothes on. Although I've ripped my armpit, I say. She has got a lace frock on, though. No, she dressed, you know, she dressed the band, she inspired the band, created the punk look through her designs and her shop, Sex, in Chelsea. And so it's like she was older, obviously, than the band she was dressing, inspiring. But so many people have been lost in the last month, you know, and I mean, we had Jerry Lee Lewis, not punk, but he was like, oh, what? And then we've had Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, prostate cancer at 56, Wilco Johnson, I'm sure you're a fan of his. Jet Black from the Stranglers, Terry Hall. It's just so sad. It's like my era, my formative influences are going. And what it brings home to me is, you know, when I was 17, 18, we had Vivienne Westwood, and we had The Clash and the Sex Pistols, and people were writing angry songs and thrashing guitars and, all right, gobbing. And, you know, and I went to a Clash gig and got head-butted by a girl in a basque and suspenders. It was a badge of honour that I had 2 black eyes for 2 weeks. And now we've got Ed Sheeran and Victoria blooming Beckham with her bodycon frocks. What's happened to youth culture? What's happened to rebellion? There's so much wrong at the moment. There are very few bands who are actually writing songs about it and yelling about it. And my son put one on the other day. It came up on the speaker in the kitchen. I went, blimey, this lot are good. And then we listened to more of the songs, thought, somebody's, you know, rattling cages. Don't you think? What's happened to music?
It's sort of like a wallflower generation now that are existing, that are afraid to offend. I mean, you have to be careful. You can't say anything these days. So music's become a bit sanitised.
Well, it's all whining. You know, I used to say, I campaigned for Six Music because I didn't want to be listening to whining women, passive women, accepting abuse in their songs on the radio. OK, so he's treating you badly. Get on with it. Leave him. Write a song. But, no, all passive. And it's just so much, you know, I think Adele's immensely talented, but it's just like crooner music.
You think,
it's like Punk Never Happened, as the book was called.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're moving on to Nigel. This one is in the Times. It's about the pharmacies. They're stepping in and taking the place of some GPs
from punk rock to high street chemists. These are some new figures which show that 440,000 people use their pharmacists for minor injuries, minor illness, rather than go to their GPs, which was double the number on 2021. And it's showing that pharmacists now are doing more and more of the work of GPs, especially as people can't see their GPs very easily. I saw some figures where 5 million people a month can't get an appointment with a GP. 3 million of those who do get an appointment won't be able to see their GP for at least a month. So they're turning to pharmacists, which I think is broadly a good thing. What is interesting is how far a pharmacist will go now. They can start referring people with possible cancer directly to a specialist. So if you go into a pharmacist and you keep buying cough medicine, the pharmacist might clock you and say, hang on a sec, I think you ought to go and see a specialist. It seems, it seems like a good idea to use them more.
I totally agree, because that's your first point of contact with the health service in many ways.
Yeah.
I'm of a certain age now, and I got a text from my GP saying you need your heart rate monitoring, go to your local pharmacist, which I did. And I walked in, got it tested, right as rain, and I can't get a GP appointment for love and the money, Liz, so surely it makes sense to make pharmacists the first port of call.
Yeah, what if you had something wrong with you? Then what? I keep getting bombarded by texts and packets arriving through the post. I've mentioned this on air before, it's a bit unsavoury, but it's like, Liz, you do a cervical smear test. Liz, you do a breast scan. Liz, why don't you do your poo test in the post?
Oh, no, Liz,
and all the rest of it.
on from that one.
No. But Pelle's just died of colon cancer. It's important. But my thing is, I turned around to somebody and said, well, yeah, if I do it, and I'm in need of treatment or further analysis, where do I go? I'm not going to get in there. So it's really worrying. But yeah, a pharmacist helped me, because a doctor actually prescribed me the wrong antibiotics and the wrong dosage, and he picked up with it. He picked up on it at the counter. And
Liz, the time of day.
Let's stick with you.
Oh, sorry.
Let's stick with you, Liz. One of your stories here: New Year's revelations. What's this about?
Well, they happen every year, don't they? The National Archives release material at the time of the events that are covered. It's considered too sensitive, too politically sensitive. So after a duly considered period of time, they let it out for the new year. And stories covered today include Britain-backed plan. This is all to do with Tony Blair's government. Yep. Britain backed the plan to kill bin Laden 9 months before the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center.
Too bad they didn't.
2 previous incidents which I needed reminding of. One was the attack on the USS Cole, a guided missile destroyer in Aden. And then prior to that, there'd been a previous attack on the World Trade Center that failed to demolish it.
There's quite a juicy story there about Tony Blair wanted Vladimir Putin.
Oh yeah, so there's our involvement in bumping off bin Laden. It's blocked by Clinton. Blair sent Vladimir Putin some silver cufflinks. He welcomed him. He thought he was the future, despite others having misgivings about the new Russian leader. Tony, what a great judge of character.
And I wonder if, Nigel, because we talk about, any connection to Vladimir Putin now is seen as like career-ending, toxic. Here's Blair sending the guy a gift.
Yeah, I think that we're going back a bit when we're trying to get a rapprochement with Russia. And bear in mind, it was before the days when Putin had invaded Crimea, which should have been the real warning shot for all of us in the West about what was about to happen with Ukraine. So I can understand that. Bear in mind that David Cameron was sucking up to the Chinese, that we now say we shouldn't be doing. I think probably talking to world leaders, even people who are potential enemies, is better than not.
Yeah, definitely. But listen, we're going to stay with you, Nigel, and moving on to this one. Who would have known? It's in the Mail, and it says, still wish you owned a Tesla. This is all about the festive giveaway and chaos with people waiting to charge.
Yes, Tesla owners had a real problem over Christmas, not being able to get their cars charged. The fact they were in the middle of a rail strike meant they had to use the cars. And the real problem is we're still not building enough charging points in this country. There are 30,000 300,000 around, nowhere near enough for the number of electric cars on the roads. The target is 300,000 by 2030, but that's quite a tall order when you think you've got to build at that kind of rate.
And most of them are around London and the south.
Exactly, yeah. And the problem is, if we believe in net zero by 2050, if we're going to get there, we have to step up and make sure this works better.
Why? Because electricity doesn't come from nowhere. All these electric cars, the electricity is still being made by importing frozen gas in tanks from the US so that we can look green. And also, I was thinking the other day, we're all getting help with our electricity bills at home. So I'm going to the garage and putting petrol in my car and paying all that fuel tax, fuel duty, at still like nearly 160 a gallon. But if you've got an electric car, you plug it in and the rest of the taxpayers are subsidising your motoring effectively.
Well, the other thing...
True, it's just occurred to me, maybe I'm just an old
But I mean, I just got my bill in, like, it was almost 600 quid. So my gas and electric bill at home is extortionate anyway.
Yeah, but are we running your car for you, Nana?
No, I don't want one of those things. I'm staying with petrol.
I'm the same as you. I look at that and I feel like getting out the world's smallest violin in many senses.
Yeah.
Because, we're being told to buy these cars. They're 80, 70 grand a pop. I can't afford that. Most people watching this show, no doubt, can't afford that. This is meant to be the future. I don't want to spend 3 hours charging my car 3 times on the way to Glasgow.
Who's got 45 minutes to wait for that? And then obviously there'll be all these cost of fortune, like cafes around where you can sit and charge the car.
Yeah.
So it's all, in my view, it's a money grab.
Yeah, also, you need off-road parking or driveway. People who can afford, a nice new Jaguar I-Pace or whatever they're called, can probably have a drive or with the tarmac over the front garden. If you live in a block of flats in East London, you haven't what do you do? Dangle an extension cable from the window?
They came out with this battery that you can plug in potentially in your house and it'll charge. But then I mean, if you look at the reports of fires with chargers from mobile phones, one of the biggest things that are causing fires. And if an electric car is on fire, how do you put it out?
Well, that's a great segue, Liz, into your next.
Oh no!
I do like these stories about hapless losers.
I just had to. It just made me chuckle, but I just thought, oh my God. Well, on a serious note, we were talking in the last segment about people running up debts, unsecured debt of 16,000 on average. According to a PricewaterhouseCoopers report. But in that same article, which I didn't get to, it claims that 22 million Brits do not have an access to a bank account because of their poor credit ratings. So there is a guy in Italy who didn't trust banks, just a tenuous link. So he had his €22,000 savings and he shoved them up the chimney. To hide them from burglars, and also obviously from his wife, because he didn't tell her. So she thought, oh, it's Christmas, let's have a nice log fire.
No.
And it's all his money's gone up in smoke. Oh, can you imagine?
Some choice words over the Christmas table, I'd imagine, after that.
Was he hiding the money from her, though?
Well, she didn't know, did she?
Was he hiding it? Well, serves him right.
I mean, you shouldn't laugh about this.
No.
But if you got 20 grand to stuff up your chimney at Christmas, I'm surprised Santa didn't blast it down on his way down. But £20,000 up in smoke, bit of a hapless loser there. Another funny story, Nigel, one that makes my eyebrows raise at this time of the day.
Mine too.
Over 50s are planning, what's it, Nana?
Well, this is the over 50s who are planning some blue New Year's resolutions, some X-rated resolutions.
They certainly are. This is a survey in the Mirror, and you can forget about the boring resolutions like giving up smoking, cutting down on drinking, having a diet. What over 50s want this coming for next year is they'd like to try a threesome. They'd like to get it to 2. 8% would want to go and meet their teen crush, which is an odd thing to go and do, while 12% would like to start their first novel. So that's the reasonable one, but the rest of it does sound a bit sort of fruity, doesn't it?
You say bad idea, Liz. Why have you?
What, to meet you?
Experience of this?
Yeah, I did accidentally meet up with my first love.
Oh, really?
And so basically, then he proceeded, after wooing me a bit, to dump me for the third time in my life.
Oh, no.
So don't go back. Look forward. Look forward in the
Good
2023, new beginnings.
But it's an interesting sort of reflection, I think, on the modern world. I mean, you know, meeting your teenage crush, that's a natural thing. As you get older, I wonder what they're up to now. But this idea of making a blue movie, I'm sorry, it's early in the day.
Yeah,
but
it puts my bowel cancer test into perspective.
Allow that now.
Thanks.
They were being told to move on in our ear here. Maybe we should turn to this sort of topic early in the morning. Okay, maybe we should leave it there. Thank you, Nigel Nelson, Liz Kershaw. Thank you for your input.
If you just